How often do you think about the Oscars? About how many Oscar-winning films there are and how many you've seen? Yeah, there's a few famous Oscar-winning films that we've all seen. The Godfather and Lord of the Rings and Titanic. I'm King of the World, all that stuff. But the Oscars have been running since 1927. There are currently over 1,000 films, feature-length films, which have won an Oscar. How many have you seen? I did the numbers for myself. It's not many, and I consider myself quite a movie buff. So here then is the premise of this podcast. Every episode, I and a rotating cast of 2 guests will randomly select one of the 1,000 films that have won an Oscar, watch it, and talk about it, with the only requirement being that one of the 3 people on each episode has to have never seen the movie before we talk about it. That will get difficult with Star Wars. Please note that our coverage of a movie does not constitute an endorsement of it. My least favorite movie of 2016, David Ayer's Suicide Squad, won an Oscar for Best Makeup, while my favorite movie of 2016, The Handmaiden, wasn't even nominated for anything. Please also note that our coverage of a movie is not a blanket endorsement of any or all of the people involved in it. A lot of terrible people have won Oscars. Kevin Spacey won an Oscar 20 years before he was outed as an abuser, and Roman Polanski won one 20 years after. But every film, good, bad, or in many cases mediocre, that has won an Oscar is an important part of film history just for being there. And they all, on some level, deserve a tiny bit of consideration, even if that consideration ends up concluding that it's garbage. And with all of that in mind, I'm your host, as always, Ellie McConaughey, and with me today is Sam Marchiony.
I've been bullshitting my way through claiming that Jupiter Ascending is just the Matrix with a girl, and I'm finally vindicated.
And River Lane.
I am fairly certain Keanu Reeves is one of my missing genders, yes.
And in case that didn't clue you in, we are here today to talk about The Matrix, the 1999 film directed by Lana and Lily Wachowski, which won Best Film Editing, Best Sound Effects Editing, and Best Visual Effects at the 72nd Academy Awards. And this is, as I said during our last episode, one of the 2 movies I get to pick, and this is the one that I love. It's like my favorite action movie of all time. Fuck Die Hard. Don't fuck Die Hard, but it's fine, but comparatively.
I can see in the Pantheon it's like in the same category as like Mad Max Fury Road. Phenomenal action movie, phenomenal technical achievement. Probably should have gotten more love in the other award categories, the ones that people actually care about.
Well, one of the advantages of this pod is that there is no award category I don't care about. We did cover
short films.
Except for short films, because I'm not... I thought about including short films. I genuinely don't know how to include them without doing, really short episodes.
A lot of them are in, distributor hell? Because they're harder to find.
Especially at the earlier ones, yeah.
From a just a streaming service or from a yo-ho-hoing perspective.
Mm-hmm.
My thing with The Matrix is I have only existed in a world post this movie. Because this movie came out in 1999 and I was born in the year 2000.
Oh, my back.
It's my turn to subject your audience to power word age, Ellie.
Ow!
So I have, in somewhat real time, watched the, discourse about this movie come full circle. Because I was thinking about it after I watched it last night, as I was headed to bed. The sort of I've watched people be like, yeah, the first one's great, but sequels are crap. And then actually the sequels have their reappraisal. I've seen the cracked articles about, the Keanu's neutral mask and what have you. And so part of the reason I was nervous to watch this for the first time is because I was there is no way this movie in any capacity can be prepared to shoulder the societal burden that I have watched upon this movie. And I think this movie is at its best when you're not thinking about the cultural context in which it is swirling in.
Yeah, we're both fulfilling the never seen it before requirement. I've been faking it. I've been faking it for so long. partially by relying on people whom are now widely considered to be hacks and should have been regarded as hacks a long time ago. You know who he is.
I do know who he is. It's interesting because a lot of the Matrix is sort of its cultural context is sort of done in reverse. Obviously, one of the first things you hear about the Matrix now is the transgender allegory. I assume both of you have heard it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go into it. We'll go into it at some point. And like, to be clear, that's definitely there in the movie, but it's only really there very strongly if you know to look for it. If once Lana and Lily came out, there was this sort of, I don't want to say illegitimate process, but a process of sort of like going over their old films and going, okay,
It's recontextualizing their work. I'm guilty of it.
precisely.
Back in my early days, I was trying to do this of YouTubing. I was trying to do this thing where like I would spotlight women, and I spotlighted Patty Jenkins, which I regret, and I spotlighted Ava DuVernay, and I spotlighted Lana and Lily for Pride Month, and I talked about how like a lot of their protagonists have a very specific queer/trans version of the hero's journey, where the thing that their hero is specifically doing is waking up into a world that is trying to make them one thing and pushing back and saying, no, I am this other thing, and I will fight to assert my right to be this other thing.
I mean, like the climactic action lot, one of the main things the villain does in this movie to sort of like look down on Neo is it amounts to dead naming him.
Mm-hmm.
And his big like, fuck you to the villain is, my name is Neo. God. I didn't post too much about it in the Discord. I actually didn't take any notes on this movie because if there were like movies that are available for this podcast that I could do completely cold, haven't watched them in years, it's this, it's the Lord of the Rings films, it's maybe Star Wars on the outside.
Oh, I was looking at the lineup of winners and nominees for this year, and everything Phantom Menace was up for, it looks like The Matrix won.
Yeah, basically.
And you have to imagine George was sitting there. I mean, George Lucas, I don't think really cares about the Academy, but at the same time, you have to imagine him sitting there going, it's not fair, I pioneered a technology.
It's really interesting, and I was on an episode of yours about the Phantom Menace. What is it, 6 weeks ago now?
Back in December.
This is coming out January 5th. We are not recording it on January 5th, audience, obviously.
You can cut that.
No, I will leave that in there. I'm leaving that in there. I have had people like, I've seen on other people's podcasts, people like respond to this or that thing like, well, how come you didn't bring up this thing that happened in the last like 3 days about this movie? To which they always have to respond, you didn't record it today, you dumbass.
Yeah, but you can't show them how it works. That's exposing the code of the Matrix, man.
That's what I'm here to do. I'm transgender. I want to make out with Trinity.
Is that our defining line? Is that you're really into Trinity, but I'm really into Neo?
Yeah.
That's how you determine our bisexuality. That is our opposing Venn diagram, the same way that Katie and I's opposing ends of the spectrum is she wants to really bang Alucard and I really want to bang Trevor Belmont.
Yep.
I just want to know what kind of cookies the Oracle was giving Neo.
I think they established in the sequels it's oatmeal.
Aw, man.
They're like tracking cookies, the way the internet gives you.
I hate you so much right now. River, my eardrums.
my point about the subway scene was going to be like, it's one of those things where I feel like, how do I put this in a way that like makes sense? I feel like one of the things that I love about the Wachowski sisters, and they are my favorite directors, is they have this ability to like do some of the most intensely cheesy shit imaginable, but they do it with such sincerity and such skill that you're just like, you gotta fucking respect it.
I mean, we saved the day via the power of love.
True love's kiss, baby girl.
Yeah, we resurrected Christ with True Love's Kiss, which is Jesus.
And they have the, like, high noon standoff in the subway station with a newspaper acting as a tumbleweed. That shit rules.
Yeah, like my thing with this movie is it took me a while to get into its groove. And I think that's because, like, again, you have to watch this movie. Like, if I could go into this the way that Callie did and not know shit about this movie, I think I would have gotten way more out of it. Like, the half-hearted cultural osmosis that I have, like, gathered over the years.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard to, like, carry the cultural expectation of it all, TM, into this movie and just sort of watch it like, nah, man, it's a solid action movie that is at its best when it is not quite as bogged down in some of its heavier, like, philosophy nonsense, TM.
What I didn't really take that many notes either, but I did very early on during, like, the introductory exposition phases, I just kept going, it's capitalism. It's capitalism. I'm in a Brennan Lee Mulligan Dungeons and Dragons campaign. The system is capitalism. Capitalism bad.
I mean, like, the core of most of the Wachowski sisters movies, that I would say that, like, the prison is either capitalism or gender or both.
Mm-hmm.
And how the two interact.
Love, above all other things, is the most important thing. And they often swing harder than they can hit. You know, I do think that one of the things that hasn't aged great about this movie is how often it keeps dropping, like, philosopher references. You know,
Yeah.
Neo keeps his hacking programs and a copy of Simulacra and Simulation. What is it, like? I think it's Morpheus when they're doing the backstory is just like, welcome to the desert of the real. You know, it is.
Yeah, Baudrillard.
Which, you know, maybe that would land better if I hadn't now read all of those things. I remember thinking it was really smart when I was, 14.
Yeah. And I think not to my better cultural touchstone for real world simulation convergence movie about capitalism is Tron. Both Tron Legacy and the OG, which is a surprising corporate espionage movie tucked away inside a video game haha movie.
Damn it, you brought up Tron and now I'm thinking about fucking goddamn piece of shit Jared Leto.
Listen, we're not talking about Ares, it's not out yet. I am strictly talking about the 80s original and the 2010 Tron Legacy, which we should treat like a duology because Ares is claiming to be disconnected from both of them.
Like, Legacy is so interesting to me because you're right, that is what the original Tron is. And, like, one of the things that you can see in the difference between Tron and Tron Legacy is that, you don't have to like The Matrix, but you do have to acknowledge at some point that every action movie made since 1999 exists in its shadow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about Sam, but you, River, are definitely too young to remember the, like, period from, like, 2000 to 2005 when every fucking action movie rated more than PG had to look like The Matrix, like, in fashion, in shooting style.
I mean, things still kind of fucking look like The Matrix because I'm so sick of seeing things in muddy tints.
Well, part of what bugs me about it, and I said this in a different Discord, so it's a new comment to you. Part of what bugs me about those is, like, I feel like as much as the Wachowski sisters do have the urge to make everything the fucking coolest, and they do, there is no reason for the shot on Dodge This to be as goddamned cool as it is.
With the fisheye lens and the pink mist.
Yeah, that shit fucking rules. Anyway, is that they also never really lose track of the humanity of their characters inside of it. Like, I really love, like, one of the few things I commented to myself, like, wrote down while I was watching it, is that there's that, like, half a second beat after Trinity jumps through the window in the prologue where she's, like, trying to psych herself up to move. And, like, that's really good. That tells you, like, she might be skilled, but she is still a person.
Yeah, like that was one of the like the third or fourth note I wrote in is like what causes such undying loyalty that you throw yourself down a flight of stairs.
Larry Fishburne.
Fishburne is great in this.
And I think the other thing that gets lost in sort of the connection to humanity is I've seen Bullet Time in so many clips and so many homages and so many like best of compilations and whatever. And I've seen it homaged and I've seen it, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the thing that like really solidifies it for me in terms of this movie is that it doesn't work. 2 bullets still graze him. He still gets hit.
I used to be the one, then I took 2 bullets to the thighs.
God damn it, Sam.
But like that's the thing. It's like, oh, it's the super cool, like cool for coolness sake shot. And then it's like, nah man, it's still a fucking human being that's still gonna bleed.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, Bullet Time got so overused in the post-Matrix action.
It's in fucking Shrek.
It's in fucking Shrek as a direct reference to this movie. But then you go back and watch the first Matrix, and they use it really sparingly. Now, that's probably a technical limitation. The way they did it was, I'm given to understand, extremely difficult and time-consuming. But it also, like, turns very specific moments of, like, these action beats into this, like, 3 seconds of Neo and Agent Smith running at each other, blown up to a full 10-second sequence, hits harder if you didn't do it every other action scene.
Yeah. Why does the bug go through the belly button? Why does the bug go through the belly button?
Eep.
That scene is so visceral, though. It's borderline a sexual assault scene.
It's kind of, well, that's sort of what struck me about it, this particular rewatch, is like, you take off your this is the most important action movie of the 90s glasses and you watch it as a fresh movie. It almost acts like a horror movie for the first like 20 minutes after we meet Neo.
Yeah, I think my literal out loud reaction was what the Jesus Christ was that? And then like in my notes are just, hey God, what the fuck?
Zandy came down to like watch a bit of it with me because it's also one of his favorite action movies, and he sort of like looked at me during that scene when I had nightmares about that thing when I was a kid.
Yeah, understandable. Have a nice day.
To be clear, he also originally watched it way too young because of the fashion. So just remind you that my boyfriend's very odd.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great like cyberware, like this is the most 1999 movie that could ever exist. It is that certain like co-location of trends and ennui and just like a smidgen of like where we were at technologically. Cause like it took me literally until the last phone call out to realize that escaping via the phone is a dial-up joke. Cause I existed post dial-up internet,
Mm-hmm. So you've never heard the modem screaming?
Well, I've heard it as like a pop culture artifact, like sounds that millennials will know. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a dial-up internet.
Every time I rewatch this movie, I'm forced to be reminded, like, we get to the club scene and I'm like, dig through the ditches and burn through the witches and slam in the back of my Dragula.
I literally wrote, Rob Zombie, what are you doing at my cyber goth rave?
I don't love everything Rob Zombie has made as a director, but man, some of his music still fucking slaps.
Okay, so I need to just get on my soapbox and say this. This was my first Matrix movie. I haven't seen any of the other Matrices, so I don't know what the deal is with whatever the one that Lana made just because she didn't want anybody else fucking with it has to say about whatever, but like living in 2025 and like we're still having these fucking conversations about AI and the garbage that it's spitting out, and yet at the same time I can't help but relate just a teeny tiny bit to Joey Pants. Like I'm sorry, I'm not happy with the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, to an extent, the Matrix kind of seems appealing, even if Agent Smith does have that big monologue about how we tried making a perfect world and it fucking sucked, which fully tracks, honestly, given what we've seen of how AI tries to replicate art and shit, but...
Well, that's one of the references in the movie that I feel like doesn't get teased out very often, because what he says is like, we tried making a perfect world, and you all rejected it. Your brains would not accept a perfect world. And that reminds me a lot of the Ursula K. Le Guin. People call it a short story. It's not. It's an essay. Those Who Walk Away from Omelas, which is all about how if you tell an audience there is a utopia, they won't fucking buy it. But then if they say, oh, this utopia, it's being powered by the suffering of a forsaken child, then they fucking buy it. And why does that? Why do we only buy it when there's something horribly wrong with it? And I don't know if she comes to a concrete conclusion about that. There's a lot in that essay, but it's one of those things that I thought about when I was watching it. Like, why is it that... And I agree, I don't think that people would buy it if they created a perfect simulation. That's often sort of like the central horror of simulation stories. Go ahead.
I've just... Even when I've been pipe dreaming about, like, buying real estate, and I see, like, a listing for a 1-bedroom apartment in the 5 boroughs of New York that's under $100,000. I'm like, that's amazing. Wait, what's wrong with it?
I mean, to be fair, that's probably the case.
Yeah.
Ow.
Well, living in New York is a mistake. Living in any major city, I say this as we all live in major cities, is a mistake.
Is Stamford a major city? Does it count?
It has an Amtrak going through it.
It's Connecticut. It's the closest thing to a major city it's gonna get. And also, like, let's face it, you're basically a commuter city to New York.
We are a suburb of New York City, yes.
I can literally walk 2 blocks and be in Boston.
Yeah, you're a commuter satellite.
I can't even argue that it's not a commuter city. I commute.
Yeah, I meanwhile live in the middle of downtown Toronto, on purpose. And I think the thing about perfect simulations is that, like, humans as, like, a species, like, you learn about history in any capacity, and you basically are doing the, like, once you get to a certain age, you've learned, like, oh, here's how things were great for one people, and then some history teacher, if they're smart, eventually goes, all right, pan the camera slightly to the left. How are people suffering to get to those people doing well? And I think that, like, in a theoretical, machine scenario, machines do not have the capability to pan the camera slightly to the left and not show, like, abject horror, I will say that it is a great use of your 90s Office on Wii TM. That very specific brand of liberal fantasia of we were in insert Ian Danskin's Daria Morgendorffer video here.
See, I was gonna bring up a different YouTuber, Dan Olson's video on. Okay, that video's on 50 Shades of Grey, but it's about there's a bit about how, like, green ambient light tells you that something's wrong, and the ambient light in the Matrix is green.
Yeah,
because it makes everybody look sickly and unwell. Fuck it, 30 Rock. I can't wear green. My skin has witch undertones.
God damn it.
But no, it's the liberal fantasia of the 90s and how we weren't happy then and we aren't happy now.
And we're all just a few short years from throwing it on the ground.
Yeah. And so the thing that, like, the Office sequence, first of all, underrated point of the Office sequence is trying to watch 6'2" Keanu Reeves, like, crouch and move around slightly stealthily. Like, underrated comedy moment. Truly underrated comedy moment.
So like, Keanu Reeves famously was the second choice for this starring role. I'm curious if either you know who.
Will Smith.
Yeah. And, like, I'm watching it this time, and I love Keanu Reeves. I've never thought he was a bad choice for this role. But one of the things that sort of struck me about watching it is, like, you compare it to Will Smith's big action movie, probably, like, around the same time as this, which is Men in Black. Will Smith's whole deal in that movie is that he knows what's going on. Whereas I think what works about Keanu Reeves in this movie is you have to, like, convince yourself that there is no reason he can't hold up that helicopter, There is no reason you can't do that, so you have to convince yourself of that. And Keanu Reeves sells well, why can't I do that? Of it all very well.
Yeah. And like, the process of him coming around to that idea is also done very well. Again, the line of "I'm gonna learn jujitsu," handshake, the FBI is gonna pay me to learn to surf from Point Break, having the same energy.
Yeah. So here's my take on it. I feel like the emotional stuff would resonate more with Will Smith, but the individual stuff works better for Keanu. Because with Will Smith, I feel like there's a better argument to be made that this is somebody people would look at and be like, you're the one. I am instantly falling in love with you. Whereas, I'm not saying Keanu Reeves is without charisma, but he's significantly subtler about it. Like,
I think my thing with Keanu, like Will Smith, to me, as somebody who has only known him as like it's sort of a cultural artifact, let's be honest here. My thing with Will Smith is I would not buy him as like somebody who does not believe he's the second coming of Christ.
Absolutely.
You know, Digi-Christ, as it were.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, Keanu's like self-doubt until he's literally like, no, I have to believe or one of my friends is going to fucking die is far more believable. And I buy his more like bewildered, like, wait a minute, what the fuck do you want me to do? And also like when he has to like flex his Godspeed TM, like I don't think that fight sequence with Lawrence Fishburne works with Will Smith. That doesn't work.
Well, part of Keanu Reeves's charm, or not just charm, like part of what you hired Keanu Reeves for, is he has this kind of innate sympathy for him. I don't know how to like define that, and Will Smith has it too, but Will Smith's is very different. You innately like Will Smith, whereas you innately want something to go well for Keanu Reeves. That's what John Wick is basing it has 4 movies now, and they're all built on, man, why can't things just go right for Keanu Reeves?
or even like to go back to Bill and Ted, like, yeah, he's a dummy, but he means well, and he and his best friend love each other so much. So you want to see them stay together.
Mm-hmm.
And also they're the chosen ones, until they're not.
I think the best way to like describe it is like Will Smith is your best friend's dog who is like really friendly and really like you like to get along with, but like you cannot imagine owning this dog full time. They just have way too much energy.
Yep.
But they're like good to spend a couple of hours with while you're hanging out at your friend's place. Keanu Reeves is the alley cat you've been feeding for the past 3 weeks, who you're slowly building up trust with, and the minute he comes inside for the first time is like a miracle of God. And I cannot explain it any other way, but I think I'm right. Keanu Reeves has sad wet cat energy. Even when he was a heartthrob. Because, like, think about it. Like, the things I know him best for are Bill and Ted, Point Break, and My Own Private Idaho. And, like, he's kind of a wet cat in all of them. He's just, like, a different flavor of wet cat, you know?
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's also, is he a wet cat in Johnny Mnemonic?
A little bit, but it's
all I know about Johnny Mnemonic is that he wants room service.
He wants a $10,000 a night hooker.
Johnny Mnemonic's wet cat energy is like kind of similar to the wet cat energy of Point Break, where it's like a very like cocky tomboy who has maybe knocked up half the neighborhoods like stray cats.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, you can't pin it on him because there's also, like, 4 other ones running around. I'm getting way into this metaphor, but the point still stands.
Dracula, he's the wet cat who got dragged into a bad house. And then he just spends the rest of the movie kind of catatonic and hissing occasionally.
No, Dracula is the house where he got abused before he showed up to yours. So he keeps hiding under the furniture when he first comes inside.
I mean, like, part of so Keanu Reeves, between this and Johnny Mnemonic, sort of became a go-to cyberpunk-y reference, which of course led to him being in Cyberpunk 2077, which is a game that I have a lot of issues with.
I know nothing about that game except for the Keanu Reeves bits.
Well, like, that's one of the issues is that, like, he is extremely good in that game, but I don't want to he's like a complete dickhead, and he's not like an entertaining dickhead. He's not like, you know, I go to this reference all the time. He's not like Villanelle where he's charming and charismatic, but also like gonna fucking kill you if you cross him. He is a very, very realistic portrait of someone who is a complete user who will chew up and spit out anyone who gives him the time of day. And I don't want him to improve. I want him gone. I want him to go away every time he's on screen.
He strikes me in that game, because I've watched my friend play bits and pieces of it. He's very much like the petulant anarchist who thinks he's cooler than he is. And I think for like what that game is trying to go for, that's fine.
We're not talking about
Cyberpunk 2077.
We're not. We are going to talk a little bit. I mean, like, part of the problem is that I kind of want to talk a little bit about the sequels, because they are not eligible for this podcast. This is basically my only shot, and neither of you have seen any of the sequels.
Sorry.
It's fine.
I have seen part of the car chase from, I think, 3, where they basically shut down the LA freeway to film it.
2. And they didn't shut down the LA freeway. They built a freeway to fuck up.
Yeah, like, I've seen part of that on, like, cable television.
And I know about like the cake scene and Monica Bellucci being Persephone.
Yes. That whole thing, there's a lot happening in that movie. I don't think either of the second or third movies work individually, but I think they work as a whole unit.
Ellie, you know what the good news is?
What's that?
Every one of those movies has Carrie-Anne Moss in them. And Carrie-Anne Moss was in The Acolyte. So hello, 6 Degrees of Star Wars, you know what to do.
I do know what to do. I'm going to throw them at your wall and see what sticks. So, like, I don't think they work as, like, individual movies. I think they work as a whole unit, but they're still, like, at that point, a little overlong, a little overstuffed, a lot of good ideas, that some of which don't go anywhere. But on the other hand, there's a scene where Lawrence Fishburne cuts a car along the side with a katana so that it flips and then shoots the underside so it blows up. What else do you want out of your fucking action movies, everyone?
More romantic build-up?
I mean,
Do you want to see Keanu Reeves fuck Carrie-Anne Moss? Because that also happens in those movies.
I mean, I want to see why they should be fucking. Romance me a little bit.
My thing is, my thing with the two of them in this movie is very much like, you've been sold, like, Carrie-Anne Moss, Trinity has been sold the idea of the savior and the one, and they're told that 90s Keanu Reeves with a buzz cut is the one. On a pure aesthetics level, again, Keanu Reeves is one of my missing gender, and while I am not much for short hair Keanu tends to be in bad movies. Mid to long hair Keanu tends to be a better sweet spot for me on the gender spectrum, but also on the do I want to bang this Keanu Reeves character? I get it as sort of a like a gut punch, like, initial infatuation of like, oh, he's gonna be the one that's gonna save us, and it's like, you know, the bit of the savior complex thing. But then, like, you get to know him, and it's like, oh, he's a dweeb. He's an awkward dweeb who doesn't quite know what the fuck he's doing. But, like, when he does get to come into his own, and when you get to watch some of, like, the little streaks of the confidence come out, it's never quite full John Wick, like, I know that I could kill you as soon as I see you, but I am currently letting you live, let's see how long that goes sort of energy. But, like, by the end, with the Agent Smith fight, it is getting there. And I think, you know, you are not immune to the inherent eroticism of self-sacrifice.
I mean, part of the issue, like, one of the issues the sequels have, and this is one of those things I can't really talk my way around like I can with its pacing issues, is Keanu Reeves is not as good as selling the aware of himself and leading the masses messiah as he is the in over his head newbie.
Mm-hmm. So kind of like a Men in Black 2 situation, where once Will Smith isn't the newbie and he and Tommy Lee Jones are kind of on the same level, the magic's gone.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not. I will say that it does not have the problem that Men in Black 2 does, where it just wants to redo the plot of the first movie with all the same beats and all the same fan service. Like, they have a new idea, they have new things they want to explore, they do escalate things extremely well. Agent Smith does come back, but now he can, like, replicate himself into other people, which does lead to the goofiest fight scene in the entire trilogy. Or quartet now, I guess. And the fourth movie is Lana Wachowski, or is it Lily? I forget which one.
I think it was Lana. I think Lily stepped back way more from filmmaking.
Whichever one it is, standing outside WB's office, both middle fingers raised, screaming "fuck you" at the top of her lungs for 2.5 hours.
Double checking. Yeah, it was Lana.
Okay, I had it right the first time. It's a good movie. It is also extremely angry that it exists.
Why is the future so goopy? Why is the future so goopy?
Pollution, capitalism.
Gwyneth Paltrow?
That was just like my first thought when we finally like come out of the Matrix and come out of the pod. And I'm like, but why is it ew? Ew.
I will say, most of the effects have aged pretty well. The CGI on the Sentinels.
I think they're super neat because I'm a sucker for Robot Bug, and they are very much Robot Bug. And especially with all of like, there are no reason for that many like little feats. And they again with the like the winning for the sound effects, like, yeah, absolutely. I believe every single one of those legs moving is real. Because they sound correct.
It's so interesting whenever you have like a story that's about technology hates humans / organics or whatever, but the machines end up feeling like they're replicating organisms. Like, I'm thinking about this in comparison to Terminator, which, fine, cards on the table, I've never fully seen a Terminator through, but there's something semi-human about Terminators too, even taking away the fact that for most of the first movie it's Arnold. Like, when you strip it down, it's still an android. It's still, like, modeled after a human structure.
So the apologetic response there, I mean, the actual response there is that science fiction and fantasy monsters are still limited by humans' ability to imagine them. The apologetic response is that, like, there are a limited number of physical structures that work in motion. You know, people didn't build pyramids all over the world because aliens were teaching them how. They were like, hey, you know what really works? Big triangle.
Yeah, which is why I love them. I love the idea of like multiple limbed like creatures, and especially like if they have to do like again, one of the things I really love in like when you're watching movies from like the 90s and earlier are all of their futures are so analog because they thought that was as far as we were going to get. It's like when you watch Bebop, which is supposed to be set in like, 2071 or whatever. And they all of their like even their hollow screens still look like they have CRT TV fuzz, and they spend an entire episode hunting down a Betamax tape because they didn't know we were gonna get to DVDs.
Well, like I literally mentioned this to Zandy while we were watching it. Like, part of what I like about older sci-fi films, and the go-to example I use a lot is Soylent Green, because it's got a lot of problems, but it is prescient in degrees. One of the things that's really interesting about it, and this is that in the future, there is no new culture, there is no new art, there is no new writing, because all the trees died off, and they couldn't imagine another way to transmit art to people other than to transmit a book to a person other than paper.
Or even like fucking Avengers Endgame, where the big like cultural touchstone is Fortnite, even though it's 2023 and wait, is Fortnite still a thing in...
Fortnite is still a thing.
Okay, never mind. Might be a bad example.
The example I was gonna go for is Fallout and the we are still stuck in the 50s because of the bots when the bombs went off.
I mean, there's lots of stuff like that. One of the core entertainments of older sci-fi is like we're past Blade Runner. Next year is Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
Where there's lots of stuff that's like where they thought the years were, as early as the 1980s, they thought New York City was going to be one giant prison in Escape from New York.
Are you saying New York's not a prison now?
We are past at least some of the birth dates for the older characters in Overwatch. I hate that I know that information.
Well, you see, part of the problem with that is that no one knows when anyone is born in Overwatch.
Correct.
Because a 19-year-old girl was childhood friends with two men in their late 30s.
It's fine. And one of them is supposed to have been dead.
And we've missed the boat on the Irish reunification of 2024.
No, we have not missed the boat on that. Do you know why? Because so long as we can trace back the dominoes beginning to fall to this year, we can count it. We have missed the boat on the 90s eugenics wars, though.
Yes, for the better, I think.
Okay.
I have one coherent / philosophical thought about this movie that I kind of want to explore in terms of my notes that aren't just jokes, including but not limited to all of my why is the future so goopy, and that is the idea of the choice to introduce fate and prophecy into a cyberpunk story.
Oh my god, I'm so done with prophecy, and I'm saying that as the only person who said that the Force was with the Phantom Menace.
I mean, I like the Phantom Menace.
Thank you.
I like the prequel trilogy, but that's neither here nor there. But like I want to talk about it in the context of like this is a cyberpunk gothic story, and the idea of like what it means to write something like fate and prophecy, which is a concept of antiquity, into the process and meaning what it means to have antiquity written into code.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that like, you know, everything in the Matrix, you know, even like what the humans imagine to some extent has to be partially imagined by machines. So like what does it mean to have machines thinking in terms of prophecy and fate?
So this is one of those things. I will say that part of the problem that we're going to run into with at least me as our Matrix head here is that like the Animatrix really complicated the narrative on the machines.
There it is.
On the machines very hard, and the Matrix Reloaded actually really complicated the notion of prophecy and the One. Without wishing to go too far into detail on it, because I'm hoping you two will eventually watch it, the One and Zion are 80% of the way to controlled opposition, and like because they realized that like people wouldn't accept it if there wasn't an alternative, so they had to have an alternative for them to escape to, and this has happened several times before.
Incredible.
Oh my god, we're in the good place. They get to the good place and it's paradise, but that makes your brain soup, so they give like... Okay, I'm sorry, spoilers for a TV show that's been done for like 4 years, but in the whole thing about the final episode is that the way you fix heaven is giving people an after heaven where your energy returns to the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Because that means that now your life is finite and it has meaning again.
Jason figured it out? Jason? Oh, that one hurts.
Right. Part of what makes the sequels interesting to me is that they really do complicate a lot of aspects of the Matrix. Aspects that I think deserved complication. I think that asking what a prophecy means to a machine is really interesting. And they have a whole segment where Agent Smith talks to the Oracle about how she knows what she knows and how she knows what he's gonna do, and like what a program who's programmed to look and think and act like a human has as ideas and goals. There's a lot of very interesting stuff in there. As I said, a lot of it ends up left on the table, but I think that we see the overambitious aspect of the Wachowski sisters in those movies, and part of the reason they aren't as beloved is that they are not nearly as incredibly tight as this movie is.
Yeah, but like that is the sort of thing where it's like, you know, I, as somebody who is queer in middle school, to borrow a joke from Jazz's podcast, and you know, inherently tied to like the interest in Greek mythology, the idea of like rule zero, you cannot outrun a prophecy, and or like the idea from Stray Gods where it's like the minute you know a prophecy, all paths are lopped off and you are on a straight shot to fulfilling it, you know, and like what that means in terms of, you know, computer code and ones and zeros, and you know, like it is an interesting idea, and I understand to some extent why they just kind of plant the seed here and why they let other creatives go off and fill in the answers, or like, you know, go off and fill off the answers in other movies. I don't necessarily think it's an answer that needs to be filled in, but I'm glad that like they decided to like in some extent like go off and filled it in for themselves just to have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think every sci-fi property should have a like spin-off run where they just let other creatives play in their world. Like I think that's the strongest thing Star Wars did, is create visions and basically let every animation studio in the world create their own Jedi OC do not steal. Like I think that's great.
And fuck up Mayanator in the process.
If you haven't seen Visions, go watch Visions.
I'll get to it.
I do wish that they'd done more. They'd done more like more stuff like the Animatrix. I wish more movie studios would do stuff like the Animatrix. They're fascinating. Not all of them work, of course, but you know, I did want since I briefly mentioned how tight this movie is. You know, every time I rewatch this film, which it's like a yearly rewatch for me, is like, man, this was their second fucking movie.
Yeah.
Directors work their entire lives to make a third act as good as lobby to rooftop to subway station to foot chase to hallway. Like that third act, immaculate, perfect, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, although like that final EMP blow up thing kind of feels like a bit much after all that epicness.
They kind of like quietly retcon that EMPs are their only defense against Sentinels in the second movie and just give them big old machine guns.
As God intended.
In case you didn't catch that Star Wars reference shot of them going up and down the ladder, they just do the TIE fighter attack on the Millennium Falcon with Sentinels at one point.
Yeah.
That's fun, actually.
Oh, I'm thinking of Power Rangers where they had a thing where they came up with anti-software bullets.
Is that from like SPD?
No, I think it was Beast Morphers, but I could be wrong. There's so much fucking Power Rangers.
There is so much fucking Power Rangers, and I have watched I've watched like a small chunk of it for my childhood, so from like 2007 to 2013.
Ow! I watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers when it was coming out, and I hate you, River.
I mean, I think Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I didn't have what series. My friend had like a box set of some of the older stuff, but I don't remember what box set he had. It was one of the 5 teams, because by the time I was watching, we were finishing Mystic Force, which I had a figure for, and then we were into oh god, no. I remember pre-Mystic Force, I did watch a bit of Space Patrol Delta. This is unlocking
Power Rangers propaganda.
Incredibly propaganda.
Ow.
No, I remember watching SPD with my brothers. That was the trade-off that had to be for watching Wish airing. Not Wish, Witch. WITCH, the animated series.
Yeah, I also remember that. I didn't watch any of it because it was never on in reruns when I was a kid.
Yeah, I just recorded some of my favorite episodes on a VHS tape with a TiVo or DVR, whatever it was called. I think we might have had to like manually set the VCR to do it. Anyway, getting off topic.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the training fight would have been montaged in any other movie, and it's instead used as our second act fight scene to break up our pacing, fuck severely. What fun.
Mm-hmm. It's a good fight, too.
It is a great fight.
It's a good way to break up all the goddamn exposition.
But it's also like delivering exposition, like the idea they need to get across, which is a kind of a complicated idea, especially for like a big budget action movie, is
the laws of physics are an illusion.
Yeah, in the world that this movie takes place in, the laws of physics aren't real. You just have to convince yourself of that, and you can do whatever the fuck you want.
And so, like, you know, it's a great little sequence, and also a great show off of like the effort that went into training these people in terms of their fight choreography. And the fact that this movie got made at all with the number of injuries that occurred is a miracle.
Oh, God.
Jesus Christ.
Everyone on the set was injured at least once, and it was not like a minor thing.
Yeah, that if you pay close attention to Keanu Reeves, you'll know he kicks a lot less than everybody else. That is because of an injury he sustained while learning to fight for this movie.
Yeah. And like Hugo Weaving had to get like a something pulled out of his leg.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this one of the reasons why I think companies are increasingly moving towards doing everything digitally, which is its own set of issues, is that, like, if you go over the history of any reasonably action-heavy movie from pre-, I don't know, 2008?
Yeah.
There will be a lot of injuries on that set. Viggo Mortensen cracked a tooth
on set of Lord of the Rings. He famously broke a toe.
Yeah.
Carrie Elwes got knocked out and broke a toe on Princess Bride.
Exactly. It's you just shit. There's this really great shot in Two Towers where you can see Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli running in silhouette, and like at that point, Viggo Mortensen had a broken toe. Orlando Bloom had a cracked rib. The size double for Gimli had like sprained an ankle or something. Like everyone was injured.
Yeah, like and so it is this sort of thing where it's like we don't want, like, first of all, insert your obligatory get stunt people Oscar knobs, god damn it.
Abso-fucking-lutely. Oscars, give stunt people a goddamned Oscar.
Seriously.
If nothing else, for, oh god, why did his name just go straight? Chad Stahelski. Like, come on, y'all. But yeah, it's very, like, I was scrolling through the IMDb trivia page because, it's what I do. And it's like, oh yeah, this actor was injured, and it's just like, the fact that any movie was made is a miracle of God.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where like part of me wants to be more critical of it because like yeah, I do feel bad that actors are injured, but on the other hand, like if they want to be making the movie, like I mentioned Viggo Mortensen, breaking a tooth on set at Fellowship, he asked them to just super glue it back in so he could go back to doing the scene.
Oh my god.
Because Viggo Mortensen is insane. I think that should be acknowledged, because I'm fairly certain that man is insane.
He's absolutely insane by now.
I unironically love Viggo Mortensen still to this day. You can't fucking stop me. Nonetheless, I don't think either.
A check is a check.
Yeah, I don't think either History of Violence or Eastern Promises are eligible for this pod. He is extraordinarily good in both of them. They're both relentlessly horrifying films to actually sit through.
He is also very good in The Two Faces of January, which is a crime movie also starring Oscar Isaac and Kristen Dunst, where they commit crime across Greece. It's great.
If you ever wanted to see Viggo Mortensen naked, go see Eastern Promises and then be really mad at me because he like cuts a dude's throat wide open in that scene.
Oh god.
But like, yeah, it's very this movie for me, I think, is a lot better when I forget its culture changing status. TM. I
mean, I think most movies are like that. Star Wars is like that to reference our friend Sam's pod.
Yeah.
Star Wars is at its best when you remember that it is a movie about space wizards for children.
Right.
I mean, I feel like I wish The Matrix had more of a culture-changing status to bring it back to Ellie's whole Oscars thing, because remember how I said I looked up what all the winners and nominees were this year?
Yeah.
Do you want to know what took 3 out of the top big 6?
American Beauty, baby!
American fucking Beauty.
And speaking of much worse movies about trans people, Best Actress, Hilary Swank, Boys Don't Cry. Deeply unpleasant film.
Is Boys Don't Cry the IRA movie?
No, it's the one about the trans man who got murdered.
Okay.
Brandon Tina.
What's the trans movie about the IRA?
The Crying Game.
That one. I had to watch that one for screenwriting class, and I don't think I understood any of it.
A lot of the big winners this year just did not hold up at all. American Beauty is a movie that I've never fucking liked. We'll get to it one day.
I mean, I'm not saying that the performances in this movie are like groundbreaking or anything, but I feel like The Matrix could have gone in Best Picture. I feel like Lana and Lily could have gotten a Best Director. I mean, this was a year they actually gave genre some attention. M. Night Shyamalan is in there for The Sixth Sense.
Mm-hmm.
1999 is such a weird year for movies.
1999 very much, you look over the movies that are nominated, not just the movies that dominated. And I feel like 1999, I say this about a lot of years, but it's very much like an in-between year. You can see a lot of people who are just fucking out at this point. Kevin Spacey is
a mistake.
We'll talk about him we'll fucking talk about him one day. But there's also like a lot of
there's a lot of very good stuff. I'd forgotten that The Straight Story got a Best Actor nomination, which is an excellent movie. You know, we've got Being John we've got some new up and comers. Being John Malkovich is in there. The Talented Mr. Ripley's in there. We got the Wachowski sisters getting nominated. We've got M. Night Shyamalan, who is
mixed bag.
A complicated artist.
The Wachowskis didn't get nominated.
No, my point is, like, these are the movies, these are the up-and-comers who were coming out at the end of the 90s. You know, Paul Thomas Anderson, Spike Jonze, and Charlie Kaufman. I don't remember who directed The Talented Mr. Ripley. Let me look. Anthony Minghella. I think Pedro Almodovar got nominated for... Oh, he won for Best Foreign Language.
Yep.
People who were future superstars are nominated. We've also got Sleepy Hollow.
The Talented Mr. Ripley is a movie that I also had to watch for screenwriting class, and is also a movie I hated. I
like Talented Mr. Ripley a lot.
It has me at young tanned Jude Law, and then lost me at liar reveal plot.
It's like the part where he gets beaten to death by an oar.
Yup.
Speaking of Sleepy Hollow, I also ended up going on IMDb #WhatYouDoInsteadOfThings, and according to the IMDb trivia, Lana and Lily's first choice for Neo, actually there was another one besides Will Smith, and it was Johnny fucking Depp.
God, no.
That would have been a worse movie.
It absolutely would have.
Like with Will Smith, I can it would be a different movie, but I could also kind of see how they could pull it off. Because like Will Smith, as much as I joke about him in the cultural context of only knowing him, you know, post Fresh Prince and whatever, and like he does have potential. Like with the right director, I'm sure you could wrangle a good performance out of him. Meanwhile, Johnny Depp,
yeah, Warner Brothers. So apparently what happened was Warner Brothers said no to Johnny Depp and tried to get Lana and Lily to go with Val Kilmer or Brad Pitt, which I could see Val Kilmer. I can't see Brad Pitt doing this. But after they both said no, then it came down to Johnny Depp or Keanu Reeves. And then Keanu got it. Thank fuck.
I mean, like, Will Smith, I can definitely see it. But not Brad. I don't really like Brad Pitt in this kind of role. Although he was a better actor in the 90s. You know, 90s was Interview with the Vampire and 12 Monkeys.
Again, he's very much an actor where if you give him the right director, you can wrangle a good performance out of him. But it's been a while since Brad Pitt has had a director who can wrangle a good performance out of him.
And also, since Brad Pitt revealed he is a horrible person.
Correct, but that's a different conversation.
Right, well, that's where I was kind of, like, sort of circling around to get to it. Like, you know, Will Smith, you said he's, like, a cultural object at this point. It's true, like, it's very hard to separate Will Smith, the legacy, from Will Smith, the actual actor who gives performances, especially since, let's be real, he gives the same performance in a lot of movies. So it's hard for me to, like, take a step back from Johnny Depp as he is now, you know, a terrible actor, a terrible human being. No, I'm not willing to bend on either of those things, audience. Don't come to my mentions. And, like, ask myself, like, could he give a good performance? I remember liking Sleepy Hollow. I haven't seen it in upwards of a decade.
It's not one of the best Depp.
The only Depp movie I like is Pirates, but that's because Pirates is a way too good movie for all that it is. Like, an absolutely absurdly good movie, considering none of it should work.
I mean, like, that's sort of like where I was, that's another point I was sort of, like, circling around. Like, I feel like, as much as The Matrix is probably the most influential action movie of the 90s, I feel like people took the wrong lessons from it. They took, you know, put everyone in trench coats and slow the action down, and I don't know. I will say that this is also, like, the 90s are where they stopped hiring people who could fight and teaching them and pretending they could act, and started being like, hey, what if we just taught actors how to fight?
Yeah.
Which I think has worked out a lot better.
Yeah, apparently the stunt coordinator, Wu Ping Yuan, he worked very, very specifically with each actor to play to their strengths.
Yeah.
Because it was like, these aren't trained fighters, so I need to build from what they're already good at.
Yeah, and like that's I think again it's we are better off for it.
Mm-hmm.
Give stunts more awards love, and watch The Fall Guy, because God, that's a love letter to stunts.
I still have to see it.
I mean, what makes a good action scene is like, and I think I've referenced this several times. What I think people forget it is that like you can you can build character around how people fight.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Matrix. My go to example for that is what's the old man Wolverine movie?
Logan.
Logan. Because like if you watch how they fight, like Laura fights like this deranged ball of rage,
Yeah, a bat out of hell.
whereas Logan fights like he's too tired to do anything but try to get this over as quick as possible.
Yeah, it's the same way where it's like watching, John Wick fight, where it's like, he's going to put you down as efficiently as possible, and if he has to improvise, or if you're in melee, you're already died. You're dead.
I think that one thing that this movie, people compare The Matrix to John Wick a lot, and I think that one thing that John Wick has that The Matrix doesn't, to its benefit, because I don't think it would work in The Matrix, is like John Wick occasionally acts like a slapstick comedy.
Yes, absolutely. It is a slapstick comedy with guns. That entire fall down the stairs in the fourth movie.
Or like that bit in the second movie where he and the other dude are like walking on two different levels parallel and just keep like trying to fire superstitions.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
The silencer fight in the World Trade Center train station. Yeah.
River, I haven't seen any John Wick.
Watch the John Wicks. They're surprisingly good.
They're good time.
The first one is a self-contained action movie about grief, and then the rest of them said we're gonna be a world-building franchise, actually, and we have lore. And you're like, what the fuck do you mean you have lore?
Yeah, I don't always love how they added lore. I feel like, as much as I've praised The Matrix for like going deeper on its stuff, I feel like 8 times out of 10, when you take a self-contained movie and then be like, and now here come the lore sequels. You know what? Pirates of the Caribbean is our perfect example.
Pirates 1 is a tight little action movie that says zombie pirates. And then by episode 3, we're fighting the East India Trading Company with, the Avengers of the 18th century pirates.
Oh, look at that. We're back to capitalism is the bad guy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and part of the problem, and I feel like Pirates of the Caribbean isn't always the best comparison point for that, because part of the problem is they just don't explain shit very well in those movies. Like, there's a whole scene in the second one that is built around the Liar's Dice, and if you don't know the rules to Liar's Dice, that scene is gibberish.
Insert Lord Ravenscraft video here to explain Liar's Dice.
And, even if you get Liar's Dice, it takes you, 3 minutes to be like, what happened? What is going on? And that's what I think, back to this movie, that's what I think works about this movie. It is extremely clear in its stakes.
It goes about a half hour before it starts explaining anything that's going on. Because I looked, the first scene, the prelude to the pill scene, which we've managed to talk surprisingly little about. It comes about 30 minutes into the film. It's actually 27 minutes, but 30 minutes into the film. Before it's even gonna attempt to explain anything, which is, fairly solid grounding for an action movie.
Because we need to make it clear that you think that you are special, that the rules do not apply to you. You are sadly mistaken. Or however the line goes.
And we also need to have Trinity show up in one of the most transgender. I have had several instances of people telling me, I thought you were a dude, when they only know me over the internet or whatever. So
yeah,
this movie is a transgender allegory, by the way.
Yeah, it's a little harder to find.
What? No! I can't imagine where you would get that idea. It's just about shooting software with bullets.
Which are also inherently software. Again, God, the difference between the high tech simulation of Tron versus the low tech simulation of the Matrix. Gah!
I mean, part of what actually kind of I tried when I watched this movie to step outside of it, and stop seeing it through 2024 eyes. The whole subway scene takes on a lot of new meaning, and this is where the trigger warning I'm going to throw at the start of this episode is going to take effect, audience. That Lily Wachowski has this incredibly moving article about how she nearly committed suicide at a train station, at a subway station, and So like Neo asserting his identity and then beating Agent Smith at a subway station takes on so much more meaning in that context. But there's no way for 1999 Ellie to know that. And I don't know if I can go back to 1999 Ellie because so much of this movie hits so much harder in the context of Lana and Lily coming out as trans. And some of it is just me being extremely silly. I pointed out to Zandy when we were watching it last night that, you know, when at the end when Neo is giving the final phone call to like, I'm gonna show them a world without rules.
I was talking to River earlier and I called that the Percy Jackson message.
If the camera swoops right between, it goes like the words it's going between are system and failure, but therefore it's going between M and F. I can hear your skepticism.
Yeah, sure, you've connected the two dots.
I've connected them.
Yeah, like it's so subtle that like it does take a bit of digging to get there. Like if you know the context, you can find it. If you don't, it's gonna boom. The one meme where it's like, wow, cool ass sci-fi action movie, trans allegory going over the head.
We do not subscribe to the curtains were fucking blue school of media literacy.
No, but like the trans allegory to me doesn't read as like it's not like, you know, I Saw the TV Glow where it's the only like it's one of the like only it's one of the like big three interpretations you can crack out of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
The trans allegory stuff for this at least feels like fourth or fifth like secondary reading you can crack out of this. Like if you were doing the academic papers about this movie, it's not in my top 3 topics I'm writing that academic paper reading of. You know?
You could write a lot of academic papers on this movie. Apparently, the soundtrack is insanely complicated and interesting in ways that I can't even begin to understand.
My thing that I noticed about the soundtrack, or the score at least, is that it is not present in a lot of the dialogue scenes and only pops up when it starts, like when it's done a lot, when most of the exposition or most of the conversation is out of the way, then it starts to pop its head back up again.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. This wasn't something I was paying attention to, but does the soundtrack only kick in scenes that are in the Matrix, or is there like some music going on while he's on the world's worst water slide?
There's definitely music when he's on the world's worst water slide. I'm pretty sure there's music at the very least in the scene where Cypher kills the entire group.
God damn it, Joey Pants.
Dozer gets him. I will say, believe it or not, you piece of shit, you're still gonna burn. Man, that shit fucking rules. And Joey Pants and Hugo Weaving are both extremely good villains in this movie in extremely different ways.
Yeah.
And like, well, Joey Pants is actually the source of one of the other like things that it does. Obviously, they could never in a million years be intentional, but like, it's interesting in retrospect that the person who betrays our little people who have moved outside of the system, he looks a lot like Buck Angel, doesn't he?
I don't know who Buck Angel is, but it is definitely telling that it's the white cis man who wants to go back in.
Buck Angel is a trans adult film actor.
Huh.
And he is famously a huge piece of shit, a huge trans medicalist. He hates non-binary people, and he also outed either Lana or Lily.
Oh god, I hate that.
Right, and that's obviously could never be intentional because like that was years off, but it's interesting. And it is interesting that it's the white cis man as opposed to Trinity or Switch, who was supposed to originally be a man out of the Matrix and a woman inside of it.
I mean, Switch did give me some vibes of non-binariness, but that's because I think some of the costumes that they wear look like, you know, a binder.
Oh yeah.
I love Switch. Switch is very much a do I want to be her or do I want to be with her? Honestly, same with Trinity.
But yeah, Tank is played by Marcus Chung. APOC is Julian Aranhanga. Both of them. One is
Is Mouse the only other white guy?
I'm trying to clock if
APOC is?
If Matt Doran is white or not, because he looks ambiguous. Or wait, no, I was looking at the wrong person. Yeah, Mouse might be white, but Mouse is one of the naturally grown humans, right? Or is that how he puts it?
No, that's Tank and Dozer.
Okay. Interesting.
Mouse is the youth sacrifice TM.
He does. I love him with those two fucking Thompson machine guns.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great shot. The other wardrobe note I had was when you're crawling through the walls and the fact that Trinity is having to do it in platform heels.
Mhm.
Could not imagine having to do that in platform heels.
I hate all of that. Apparently, Carrie-Anne Moss did twist her ankle at one point and didn't tell anybody because she didn't want to get fired.
Mhm.
I feel that in my soul. There are pictures I will not show you because they are bad.
I mean, like the scene in the walls is also like part of what makes the film. Like you mentioned the other subjects that you would write papers about. I would write more about how this movie is a cab before I would write about the trans allegory.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things that I like. I would, if I would taken proper notes, I probably would have noted down. But like, there are all these rules that govern our our law enforcement officials. But in this movie, they just fucking change the building. That's sort of like how law enforcement officials like, oh, there are all these rules, and we just suddenly forgot them. It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we established the rules don't matter.
It's a very ACAB movie, not just because all three of its villains are
Cops.
old white dudes, old white cops. Yeah.
Would that make Cypher the cop in your brain?
Yes.
I guess so.
Actually, I mean, like literally, the agent coming out of taking over your body is literally the cop in your brain. That is that is the metaphor. Like that is the metaphor of everyone being a threat until people have come up to understand that cops are not our friends. Everyone is a threat.
Okay, but speaking of being inside you, one of the effects that I don't think has held up as well is the bit where Neo goes into Agent Smith and then rips him apart from the outside. Part of it does look a lot like the scorpions, or not the scorpions, the scarabs in The Mummy, which was not nominated for visual effects this year, surprisingly. But, like, human skin is so hard to render on CGI, and it fucking shows.
Yeah, there's a reason that like all of the early Pixar movies are like, bugs and toys and inherently plastic things, and it's not until like 2003, 2004 whenever Monsters Inc came out that they started to feel comfortable doing fur.
Yeah.
The Matrix effects get away with a lot more because like you can sort of say, well, they're intended to be kind of
goofy
because it's already like a fake world. Some of the effects haven't aged great, but like I don't feel like any of them are distractingly bad. They're mostly just kind of like, well, it's 99. They did what they could.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Phantom Menace's final battle taking place on a Windows desktop.
Precisely.
You're right, but hey.
Again, I gave it a forces with it.
The force is with it. But again, that final battle sequence is mostly carried by John Williams' score doing the absolute most. Duel of the Fates fucking bangs, but that's not the movie we're talking about.
Well, like that was going to be my question. We one of the jokes we've been asking ourselves to do is like when we do crossover episodes like this, do we ask the questions attached to them? So I guess, I mean, obviously The Matrix is eligible for 6 degrees, so Sam, is the Force with it?
Yeah, I'll say the Force is with it. It's fine. Not my thing, really. Like, I'd probably watch Bound again before I watched this again, but, like...
Bound.
Yeah, I know, Ellie, I know.
Bound.
But, like, it's good. I get why it is cultural touchstone that it is. And, I'm not opposed to going in on the other movies for my podcast, so yeah, I'll give it a Forces with it.
I think the Force is with it, yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking about Gina Gershon and Bound. What's up?
I will say, I don't think this counts for my pod in terms of the rom-com of it all. And I don't think you want to really inherently read Keanu or or you don't want to read Trinity or Neo as completely straight. So
Yeah, I mean, I just assume in Wachowski world everybody is bi until proven otherwise.
I mean, I was gonna go into it, but I decided like it's more of a thing that happens in Reloaded. One thing I do notice is that Trinity is not as sexualized as a lot of other women are in action movies by the camera.
the camera focuses, if it does choose to like wear her revealing clothing, she's very, like, Carrie Ann Moss is very broad and her shoulders get a lot of attention.
I was literally gonna make that point. Yep.
Yeah.
The moment when she's walking towards the helicopter, I couldn't help it. I was like, "That ass though."
Badass. I mean, it is a case much like Bound. It is shot with a less with what was obviously turned out to be not a male gaze, but like a female gay gaze. I think both of them are gay. I don't know off the top of my head. And it makes it interesting, and I think it makes Trinity a more interesting character than a lot of women in action movies at the time often were, or still are to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, I do know that one of the sequels has like a massive orgy, so that's another part of why I believe everybody in Wachowski world is bi until proven otherwise.
They do have a massive orgy, yes.
And as the mask male enjoyer, Keanu in the black suit in the Oracle's room is again both a missing gender and a 7 out of 10 good Keanu look. Like, again, I'm not typically a short haired Keanu person, but would.
Personally, I want to like one thing I always wanted to talk about are like Morpheus's pinch nez sunglasses that he wears during action sequences. Man, you are doing too much there, Morpheus.
Oh, 1,000%. But it's so funny.
Sam, do you have anything to plug?
As we have mentioned multiple times, I'm the host of 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. When this goes up, I will have recently dropped an episode of my own, having these two goobers with me,
Mwah.
along with our fellow Wheat Sea podcaster, Jasmine Garcia, to talk about I Saw the TV Glow for a different trans isekai. Does The Matrix count as an isekai?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It is the American isekai.
I mean, like there is a point that people have made, and it's like it's worth interrogating. Like how often the American version of an isekai involves taking the motherfucker over. You know, Army of Darkness, The Matrix,
Narnia.
Narnia.
Mm-hmm.
It's more. Well, Narnia isn't American, but the point stands. Western.
It's our grandparent.
I will also say that I am directing Worlds Elsewhere's production of Pygmalion, which is going up on February 1st. So check out worlds-elsewhere.com for more details there. And I'm on the socials as Demisem. And that's me.
River, how about you?
You can find me on Blue Sky at Dreams Rebel. You can find me on my own website, blog.filmline.online, where I am attempting to do the great MCU rewatch. Hopefully by the time this episode goes up, I will have maybe tried writing my third one, but I have already posted 2, including the blueprint that is Iron Man 1 and how the Incredible Hulk failed to inspire feelings in me. You can also find me on my own podcast, The Straights Aren't All Right, in which I gather a bunch of queers together and try to answer the question, make them watch straight rom-coms and try to answer the question, are the straights, like, okay? You can find that on its socials, which are listed in those episodes.
As always, you can find me, Ellie, on Tumblr at Football in Tuxedos with dashes between the words. You can find me on Blue Sky, Medium, and Letterboxd at LSR42. And you can find this podcast on Blue Sky at Biggest Night Pod. We are available on both Spotify and YouTube. And if you follow us on YouTube, be sure to give us a subscribe, maybe like and comment on the videos so that you can tell me which parts you like and which parts you don't.
And thanks both to Sam and River for coming out for our first episode of 2025.
Hell yeah.
As I said, for our 2 January episodes, I decided I get to pick them with the caveat that it has to be one movie I love and one movie I really hate. And obviously this is the movie I love, so tune in next time when we go back to 2022 for The Whale.
I'm out.
Oh boy. See you then.